Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, July the 6th, 2016, show number 1099. I am your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening, if you're listening in live or via the archive, however you choose to listen to the show. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. We're going to talk a little bit about Apple's making organ donation built into iOS 10. I think it's very cool. We'll talk about that. I've always been a big fan of organ donation. I think everyone should do it, given your personal choices and religion and superstition and whatever else might be. But if you don't have any of those things, you should be an organ donor. You ain't going to use them when you're dead. You'll get new ones, in theory, if you go to heaven. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about automobile, not only automation, but technology. You may have heard the story last week of the tragic tale of someone using autopilot on their Tesla and dying in what is undoubtedly the first accident of its kind. Sadly, probably won't be the last. And also the story yesterday of a Jeep being stolen because someone hacked into the car. That's not good. Is this too much technology? There's a lot of technology in cars nowadays. If you bought a car in the last 2 years, you've got more technology than NASA did to send a man to the moon. Is that a good thing? We'll talk about it. Send an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com if you have any comments about anything that we talk about on the show. And then in our starting point photography segment, we're talking about street photography, how to take pictures of things and people on your street, whether you're in your hometown, whether you're traveling, how to do that. There's a couple of different techniques we're going to talk about shooting street photography, no matter what kind of camera you have. So we'll talk about all those things and much, much more. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, did you see this story? And God, you had to have seen it. That NASA threw a rocket in the air 5 years ago. It's now in orbit around Jupiter, 1.7 billion miles away. Traveled at 165,000 miles an hour, and they stuck the landing. It got there within a second of when they thought it would, and within under 100 miles of where they wanted it to be. Now, 100 miles sounds like a lot. If you're walking, that's a long way. But if you're shooting a space rocket across the universe, 100 miles ain't nothing. They shot a BB around the planet 15 times and hit a dime on the other side. I think we should buy everyone in NASA a beer. That's just an incredible feat of engineering and mathematics and physics and science, and it's just amazing. And then hopefully the science that we get out of that will be even more amazing. But just conceptually, the idea that they just threw that out into space and hit what they were looking at, that's incredible. Incredible. That's the good. The bad is, I was up at Whistler, British Columbia here over the weekend, rode the motorcycle up there, and there was a little candy store there. And I saw these in the candy store. I've already talked to Sherry and Wayne about this in the IRC chat room. Speaking of the IRC chat room, as always, if you want to join us, you can go to the website, yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there below the video is Monty has set it up so you can just join the IRC chat room. Really, really easy to do. Or you can join us in the Telegram chat room, too. We've got 2 chat rooms that run during the show. Telegram chat room runs 24 hours a day, too, so if you want to join anytime, you can. So tell me, we've established that Sherry in Ontario knows what this stuff is, and Wayne in Nova Scotia does. This is stuff that, as a kid, I remember fondly liking this. And when you hear the description of it, you'll figure out why the hell you'll question my sanity. It's called Thrills gum. Okay? It's just gum. It's not bubble gum. It's just gum. It's like Chiclets. It's the same sort of shape as Chiclets. But the thing is, the Thrills gum, I don't know if you can read this in the bottom, it says, it still tastes like soap. Yes, this gum tastes like soap. Honest to God, it tastes like soap. Or as Sherry says, floral rosewater flavor. No, it's soap. It's soap. That's what we called it as kids, soap gum. Why did we eat this? What kind of messed up children were we that we ate gum that tasted like soap? I don't understand. This is stupid. Now, do any of my American friends recognize this stuff? I'm curious to know, because no one here in BC knows what this is. No one out here in this part of the country knows what Thrills Gum is. So we've established that people in Nova Scotia know what it is, and people in Ontario know what it is. Do you Americans know what Thrills Gum is? Just out of curiosity. MacMan says, never seen it in the Midwest. Canadians are different, says Monty. Dave D says, I grew up in Detroit across from Windsor, never saw it. Remember Gene on the show. What do you guys talking about? Oh, Monty's talking about, I didn't think four people, Shawn, Ian, Bill, and Gene, was bad at all. They played nice with each other for the most part. Yeah, that helped because we were in the room at the time. So, anyway. So, yeah, if you know what Thrills Gum is, if you're American, send me an email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. I'm just curious to see how far this gum made it. We know Ontario, we know Nova Scotia. Did you eat it if you swore? Exactly, that's right. But yeah, it wasn't like it was the gum that your mom made you eat if you said bad words. This was gum we actually bought and ate out of joy. I haven't opened it yet. I haven't tried it. You know, the package is still pristine, full of gum. I don't know how I'm going to try it because it tastes like soap. Anyway. That was the good, the bad, and the sherry. Eat it now! No, I'm not eating it. Shut up. I got an email from a listener who canceled the Your Mac Life subscription. They said, I will no longer endorse Jim Dalrymple's increasingly strident libertarian oligarchic diatribes with my hard-earned time and money. Huh? Anyone else feel that way? Anyone else know what he's talking about? Because I honestly don't. Now, maybe it's because I don't listen to Jim when he talks, but... And I'm not mocking the listener for making that choice. It's your money. You do what you want to do with your money. If you don't want to donate to Your Mac Life for whatever reason, I'm okay with that. And lots of you don't. I'm kind of okay with that. But I don't know what he means by Jim's increasingly strident libertarian oligarchic diatribes. Sorry that Jim makes you feel that way. I'm not going to change anything, though. I don't think I should. It is only one email. Back in the day when the show first started, every single time someone sent me a critical email, I would change the show because I wanted them to keep listening. I don't do that anymore. I accept your criticism. I passed it along to Jim. I honestly don't understand your criticism. So maybe if you want to, I don't know if you're still listening, but if you want to explain what you mean, maybe I can do something about it. But Jim's going to stay on the show. So check if you actually lose a subscriber. Yo, I did. I actually lost a subscriber. He definitely went. So someone's going to step up. All right, someone else has to take his place. Go to yourmaclifeshow.com website. On the left-hand side there, you can subscribe to Your Mac Life for $2, $5, $10, $15, whatever amount of money you want to do per month. You can use PayPal, you can use your credit card, however you want to do it, and it sends the money to me. And I really need it this week because my bike's going in for valve checks. That's going to be an expensive job. Oh, I'm not looking forward to that bill. That's going to be really hard. MacMan says, speaking of which, I need to cancel my separate payment and set up a single one. Yeah, you're absolutely. Go ahead and do that. That'd be fine. That would be fine. Well, we can talk to Jim about this, but I want your guys' thoughts too. Are you organ donors? Do you know how to do the organ donor thing? Is it easy where you are? I know it is here in Canada, in British Columbia, in Nova Scotia. It's just a little checkbox on your driver's license renewal. I've always thought that organ donation should be opt-out, not opt-in. I think a lot of folks aren't organ donors, simply because they don't know they can be. They don't know how. It's an easy process, but not something you think of. So I think unless you've got religious objections, which are fine, or moral objections, again, which are fine, I think everyone should be an organ donor. I think I've seen studies that show that if we could just increase the amount of organ donation, now I think I saw somewhere it's like less than 20% of people who are eligible to be donors actually check that box off on their driver's license. If you could just double that, not even have half the people, but 40%, we'd lower the waiting list for so many people who are looking for donations. Heart, lungs, kidneys, livers, eyes. Please, if you can, next time you renew your driver's license, check that box. There's no real reason why you shouldn't check the box. Kimbo says, yeah, and some people don't realize how much you can donate. I think there's 7 things. What is it? It's heart, lungs, that's 2, kidney, eyes. What else are the major ones? Liver, but liver is a donation that you can do while you're still alive. You can cut half your liver and donate. It's like bone marrow, it grows back. Heart, yeah. So heart, kidneys, eyes, lungs. I thought there were 7 things. Pancreas. And you can donate tissues too. Regardless of what it is or how many you have, do it if you can. Someone out there, someone lying in a bed right now who, if you, God forbid, had an accident tonight, could use your organs. So have something good come out of a bad thing, a bad situation. I've always seen these heartbreaking stories of these people who meet the people who have their child's organs, and they're heartbreaking. They're wonderful stories, amazing stories. You know, you see stories of grown men having the heart of a teenage girl, and they meet the girl's parents, and it's just wonderful, wonderful stories. Awful stories, but you know, do what you can. Sign your organ donor card. Later on the show, we're going to talk about street photography, how to take your camera out on the street and take interesting photos, the techniques of that, what you can and can't do with street photography. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening, or in the archive if you so choose. In our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm drinking.
Well, that means you're doing good.
Oh, it means I'm alive.
I think that's a fair assumption. Speaking of being alive, we posted, or you posted, up on The Loop this idea that in iOS 10, Apple is going to make it much easier to become an organ donor. What do you think of this?
I think it's great. I don't think that I'll have any organs left worth taking. So
that's always my concern too. Is like after you die, you'll look down and the doctor's going, "No, just throwing stuff in the trash. We can't use this. We can't use this."
Yeah.
I mean, after all these years of smoking and drinking and all the things that we've done, I don't know there's going to be a whole lot left.
I think that it's a great thing because it's something that needs to have some attention drawn to it.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people every year that die because there are no organs available. And if this is the thing that does it, and, Apple does have that power, then great thing.
Yeah, you can't. There's nothing. I've seen people complaining about this, but it's not like Apple's forcing you to be an organ donor. People, come on, and they're not going to take the organs from you while you're still alive.
Yeah, well, I've actually tried to sell some organs in the past few months, and
exactly.
They took one look at me and said, "Oh, phew."
Yeah, I know. It's a real shame, especially for the stuff you can grow back. Like I'd donate half my liver for a few $1,000 because I know it's going to grow back. Well,
actually, I think I probably need that about now. So
those are good, fair point.
I don't want to go halvesy on the liver.
Do you? I'm going to assume that you are an organ donor.
I am not.
Really? Why not?
Because I don't think that there's anything worth having.
But there might be. You're not a doctor. You don't know. How are your eyes? You don't wear glasses.
I do so.
You do? Since when?
For a few years.
I've never seen you wear glasses. So you're wearing contacts, or?
No, I wear reading glasses.
Oh, reading glasses. Okay, all right. Still, a blind person will take bad eyes.
Well, there you go.
A blind person not going to say, "No, you're not 20/20. I'm not taking them." Anyway, sign the organ donor card. Let the doctors decide what it is that they
yeah, but then they're going to be rummaging around inside.
You think you'll notice? Is that the problem?
Well, you never know.
Ow, ow, ow! And you can't do anything about it. You're just sort of,
I know, right?
I'm not dead yet. That was one of my favorite Monty Python routines from A Meaning of Life, where the doorbell rings and this middle-class guy answers the door and he says, "Yeah, you Mr. Johnson? Yes, we're here for your organs. But I'm still using them." Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You sign the card. It just cracked me up. And so they literally on his kitchen table take out his kidneys, because you signed the card.
You signed the card.
You signed the card. You said we could do it. But yeah, folks, everyone out there, if you can, it doesn't matter how old you are, donate your entire body to science. You're not going to need it where you're going next. There's absolutely no need to worry about it. I saw an interesting story from Business Insider that really shouldn't be news or surprising to anybody. iOS users spend lots more money on apps than Android users.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to Android users about this?
I've talked to a couple of Android users. I don't know a whole lot of Android users, to be honest. I don't know what that is, but I don't know a whole lot of them. But I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe they don't use their phones for work as much because, I mean, you can find the free social media apps, and the apps that I pay for are music ones, and things that I would use for work. So, and even some of those apps like Dropbox and stuff like that are free. So,
yeah, I find it really interesting when I talk to Android users. I'm always curious as to why they chose it, and for the vast majority of folks I speak to, it's money. They can get a free Android phone, or they can get 4 Android phones for the price of one, kind of thing. So a lot of folks are doing it because of that, but a lot of it is because the quote unquote normals just don't use their phones the same way us techies do. And they don't need a lot of different apps. The free ones are fine, so they don't need to spend money on a Twitter client because there's a free Twitter client. They don't need to spend money on a better email client because there's an email on the phone. They just don't seem to use their phones to nearly the extent that, in general, iPhone users do.
Yeah.
So I always found that interesting.
I find it interesting too. But, I think that we have to be, and I think Apple is now cognizant of the fact that there is some price sensitivity with these phones. And, especially if you're looking at a family, and a family is, they have to buy 3 or 4 phones or more to outfit everybody. That's a pretty compelling deal when you can get a multi-line, what are the plans, and like 4 phones for a couple $100.
Yeah, exactly.
And
this is the downside of the Android ecosystem for these folks who are trying to sell hardware but then want you to pay for services. If Android users are so price conscious, they're not going to buy your services. At least, the theory is that Apple users are more, because you bought an iPhone, you are in theory are more willing to spend money anyway.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
But I think, but even on iOS, I mean, it would be unfair to characterize, all the Android users as being not willing to pay for software because, on iOS, even the people that are able to pay for software, they're pushing the price down as well.
Yeah.
And it makes it very difficult for a lot of developers. And some developers had just said, screw it, I'm going to charge what I want, and if you don't want to pay it, don't pay it.
No.
And I personally, I think that's the best thing. I mean, if the software is not worth it, then it's not worth it.
Sure.
But if the software does what it says, and it's a good piece of software, and you pay $10 or $20 for it, and it's an integral part of what you do, whether that's music or a business app or whatever, then you're going to buy it.
I wonder if you gave Apple the chance to go back, or developers a chance to go back, that we wouldn't have gone with that 99-cent price point. I think that hurts a lot of people. As they think that that's all an app on the iPhone is actually worth.
But there are apps that are worth 99 cents. They do something quick or they do something very simple, and you're willing to pay $1 for it. I think the problem is just what you said there. The people start to equate $1 with what an app is worth.
Yep.
And that's not what an app is worth. That may be what that app is worth. Yep. And, people, I know I have, everybody has had a bad experience with an app where you pay $5 for an app or more, and, it doesn't work.
Yep.
And then you're just, kind of pissed off that it doesn't work. But, still, I remember back in the shareware days, Shawn.
Yep.
I mean, where you got the apps that we have now, even the worst ones that we spend $1 on, were more advanced than the apps that we had back then as shareware on our Macs.
Yep.
But there were still some great shareware apps. Graphic Converter is one that immediately comes to mind. So there were some great apps back then. There's some great apps now. I wish people would stop judging the developers that are making great apps and want to charge a fair price for it. Yeah. Don't judge them because you may have had a bad experience with a 99-cent app. Not all apps are worth 99 cents. Some aren't even worth 99 cents. Sure. Others are worth $20 or $30. I think don't complain about it. Pay it.
I think the shareware thing is a good point to bring up because in those days, and I'm surprised Apple hasn't allowed this, back in those days when there was a lot of shareware around, you would try an app out for a day, a week, a month, whatever it might be, decide whether it was worth your money, and then, in theory, delete it or pay the developer $10, $15, $20, whatever they were asking. Because we can't test software out anymore, at least on the iPhones. I think that makes things difficult for developers to try to get us to give them money. So they lower the price where it becomes almost a no-brainer, where you don't mind blowing 99 cents on an app that doesn't actually work.
Right, right. And, you we've before, a lot of how we find apps these days are from friends
Yeah.
or, family, or, if I'm looking for a photography app, I'm going to email you
Yeah.
or text you and say, hey, I need an app that will do this funky thing with a picture.
Yeah.
What should I use? And, you'll come back and give me like 6,000 and I'll just ignore what you say and pick the first one, and
That's right.
because I don't know any different. So
yeah, it's that curation aspect has become so much more important, and the fact that we can now do things via Facebook and Twitter among our friends. We don't have to wait for someone at Macworld to review something or someone at some other website to review something. You can just say, hey, Twitter, I need an app that does this. And because
right.
you'll get responses from people you know, like, and trust, you'll go with their recommendations. I don't know if that minimizes the things that Macworld and other websites are doing from a review point of view. In theory, those reviewers are more quote-unquote professional. But I take a lot of my recommendations from friends and from Twitter and from Facebook.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before too. With the reviews, it's sometimes I don't read a lot of the reviews that are out there because I just don't think that they focus on the right thing necessarily, and how you're going to use this. But I know that if I email you a question about a photography app, that I'm going to get more than what I need in return. Yeah. And I'll just pick one. I mean, you'll still be rambling on. I've already bought an app and have it downloaded, and I'll just mark everything else. Every I'll go in and put K.
Yeah, that's right.
K.
As Monty in the IRC chat room says, if I could test drive an app for 24 or 36 hours before buying it, I'd definitely buy more higher priced apps.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I'm not saying that the price consciousness that we have for apps is not warranted in a lot of circumstances, and that would certainly solve a lot of the problems. I mean, if we're going to shell out $20 or even more on an app, it would be nice to be able to just take it for a little test drive and say, is this going to do what I need it to do? Yeah. Yes, immediate purchase, done.
Yep.
And that's a difficult thing right now because I also don't know how much to trust the reviews that are posted on the App Store.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, I ignore those.
Because there are some great points that people bring up, and some of them are problems that I'm trying to fix. And when you look at the responses, you think, "Ooh, geez, really?" Yeah. It not only doesn't fix it, it makes it worse, yeah. Really. And then at some points you need to try something, so you download it and it actually works. And I'm thinking, what the hell?
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, that's the same thing that people have with Apple Music and me. A lot of things don't work with Apple Music when I start to dig into it. But for other people, it works perfectly fine. Right. And they're saying, I don't know what your problem is.
That's right.
Well, my problem is now you. So,
speaking of test-drives, there was the tragic story last week of even more ironic. This guy was a fan of Tesla and Autopilot, but someone died in the first Autopilot Tesla related accident. You said in the story on The Loop, again, tragic loss of life, but come on, you're responsible for your car.
Yes.
Do you think, and this is an interesting point of view I've read from other people, that part of the problem, and this is an air quote thing, is that Tesla calls it autopilot when in fact it isn't. It's driver assist.
Well, I mean, come on, it's a marketing term. If you're going to get in your car and allow the car to actually drive and be watching a movie,
yep.
while the car is driving, then I'm sorry. I don't have much sympathy. I don't. I do think it's a tragic loss of life, but I think it's tragic because whoever that was driving didn't respect an automobile going, 60 miles an hour, didn't respect that enough to watch what he was doing. I mean, he had a movie playing beside him.
Yeah.
And I saw videos of people reading books.
Oh, yeah. I've seen people in the back seat.
I mean, come on, people. Have some common sense.
Yeah.
And here people are blaming Tesla. And, okay, what Tesla explained in that accident last week about the truck coming across and the way that the light hit and it was white and it couldn't distinguish between the bright sky and the truck.
Yep.
But if the guy was paying attention, he could have swerved or slammed on the brakes. And if he didn't have enough time to swerve or slam on the brakes, if human interaction wasn't enough to save his life, then it wasn't the autopilot's fault. It was the truck's fault for coming across. So I have always said, I don't want to drive with autopilot. I don't. I love to drive.
Yeah.
I love to drive. I feel bad for him and his family, but geez,
there's going to be a lawsuit coming out of this. You just know that's the way American society works. Somebody has to be blamed. This can't just be an accident. This can't just be an unfortunate incident.
Then he should be blamed.
Yeah, that's right. You turn control of your vehicle over to someone or something else.
Yeah. Well, not just that. It's not that bothers me. I understand that autonomous, it's all coming and all that. The fact that gets me is that people are not paying attention.
Yeah.
Nowhere does it say you don't have to pay attention.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's the part that gets me. If somebody is to blame here, it's not the technology. It's the fact that you don't pay attention. And that is what I think is to blame. It's the humans that are to blame. So if this car is driving down the street, and the person is actively looking and ready to intervene, then I think that accidents can be avoided.
Yeah.
Maybe it will actually prevent some accidents that human interaction would have caused.
Sure.
But you can't just give up your responsibilities of operating a car and think it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
That being said, I would make the argument that this technology shouldn't be allowed in cars. I think there's too much of this technology that can distract from a driver. And I'll be very clear in my biases. I ride a motorcycle, and I see more of this idiocy every single day than most people who are in cars because you don't pay attention. On a motorcycle, I've got to pay attention to everybody. And I see morons doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And it's just going to get worse the more various kinds of autopilot we have. Again, we've seen videos on YouTube with the guy in the back seat of a Tesla.
Yeah, well, and I did jokingly say that if I ever get a car with autopilot, I'm just sitting in the back seat and going. But I would never do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just stupid. And if that's what you want to do, then you're not only going to hurt yourself, you could hurt other people.
Sure.
And think about if somebody did that and it was your kids out there driving that got hurt because this moron was sitting in the back seat of his car and not able to control it.
Now, Wayne, sorry, go ahead.
Those people should just be hauled out of their car.
Wayne brings up a really interesting point in IRC, and this is, I think, part of the problem is that we're caught at the beginning and the middle of what will eventually be our self-driving future. Wayne says, if the truck had been self-driving, this wouldn't have happened.
No, he's probably absolutely right.
As long as we have this mix of drivers and semi-autonomous cars, we're going to continue to have these accidents.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, just out of interest, Wayne, a question for you. Do you think this was the fault of the Tesla?
I think the Tesla. I'll read you Wayne's answer when he gets it. He said Wayne says no. The truck didn't have the right of way.
Yeah, I mean, it is an unfortunate accident.
Yeah.
The truck came across the road. I have to think that either the guy wasn't paying attention or he didn't have physical time to get control of the vehicle and swerve or slam the brakes on.
Yeah.
And that's not the fault of the technology. And of anybody, I'm not trying to protect the technology, because I would never use that. Stuff would freak the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I want to drive my own car. That's just what I like to do. So, but I think that Elon Musk is getting the raw end of the deal here, because there are, thousands upon thousands of car accidents every year, and nobody says a word about them. But,
Exactly.
You have one car accident in a Tesla, and Elon's getting raked over the coals, and I don't think it's right.
Wayne says average number of people killed on U.S. roads each day is 80. Funny how no one mentions the other 79 that day and every other day.
Right. And what? And those people, because they were somehow involved in a mechanically driven car, those ones don't matter.
Yeah.
It's only the autonomous one that matters. I think that we have bigger issues to worry about than this autonomous car, because, as Wayne said, if that truck had been driven autonomously, this wouldn't have happened. And there's a funny graphic on, I think it's on Vimeo, of what traffic would look like if all cars were autonomous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's no stoplights, there's nothing, and there's cars everywhere, but they don't crash into each other because they're all autonomous. And it's funny to look at, and you think, well, yeah, of course that's the way it's going to go, because it's like a bunch of robots driving around. And then you'll have me come screeching through the middle, weaving in and out,
Now that being said, I hope that Tesla will do something to prevent this stupidity. I thought when they first announced this technology was going to be, you could download it in your car, there's got to be something that Tesla can do to prevent the driver from taking his hands off the wheel for too long. So, a lot of us will drive with our hand on top of the wheel or our hand at the proper 10 and 2 position. Let's have not autopilot, but driver assist, where you have to at least touch the wheel every 5, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it might be. You've got at least, and it's got to be, the airbags know if there's a driver in the driver's seat by weight. So the airbag can then tell the Tesla software there's no one sitting there, stop the frickin' car.
Right.
Maybe Tesla can do a little more things to prevent the natural stupidity of people.
Try and protect people from themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
It's interesting when you say the driver assist, because if you look at some of the driver assist things that are available now, some of even the more simple things, like the fact when a car is in your blind spot, some cars have a light on the mirror that will shine.
Yep.
The light will come on, and you cannot see the car, but that light will shine and tell you there's a car beside you.
Yep.
I think that is a great feature. And what's interesting, though, there's these brakes. The brakes that will go off if it recognizes an accident.
Yes.
I've talked to a couple of friends that have cars with those brakes on them, and they say if they go into certain mall parking garages, the brakes will go off because it dips down, and the brakes all of a sudden slam on, and the cars behind them almost rear end them because you know what I mean. The way that it dips down so sharp in these places that the brakes go off.
Oh man!
But still, those are good things, because it is almost like we have to protect ourselves from ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why Tide can't make these little laundry packs, because parents are so negligent that they let their kids eat them.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
And then Tide gets sued. Then Tide gets sued for that.
Yeah. No, if you're a negligent parent and you let your kids eat Tide, then screw you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with Tide. That's your parenting skills.
Monty says, I think a
See,
facial...
now I'm getting all pissed off.
Well, good. This is the way we like you. Well, most of us like you that way. We got an email from a listener who said that you were increasingly strident libertarian oligarch diatribes.
See, I don't even know what the fuck that
Neither
means.
do I. I'm from Nova Scotia. I have no idea what any of that shit. And I asked the guy, too. I said, dude, what are you talking about? I have no clue what you're saying. Monty says, I think a facial recognition camera on the driver's position would be a good idea. If the car detects the driver isn't looking in the direction of travel for X period of time, then driver assist gets disabled.
Well, let's hope he turns back around before it gets disabled.
Well, it does not disable as in shut down. The car will slow down. There are ways to solve this problem. Basically that's what it is. Let's hope.
Well, and it's so unfortunate that we're having this problem because of people's stupidity, because people will post YouTube videos of themselves sitting in the back seat. I mean, that's just absolutely unreal that people will do stuff like that, but they do.
Now, talking about the technology in cars brings up the next thing I wanted to talk about was the story I read yesterday of apparently there's an epidemic of Jeeps being stolen in the United States by people hacking into the software of the car. A lot of cars, I know I'm on my motorcycle, a lot of newer cars have an electronic key fob that the car won't start unless that electronic key fob is near the ignition. It doesn't have to be in the ignition. It has to be near the ignition. Well, hackers are now breaking into these cars and hacking into the car's software to start the car and drive it away very quickly, very easily.
And it sounded to me, I think this was a Wall Street Journal thing that I was reading today and posted. It sounded to me like they were actually able to reprogram a fob that they had to match that car. So then they could take the car away. And the cars have never been found.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, holy shit.
Those fobs are easy to get. I mean, I needed new fobs for my motorcycle. I just went to my local a bike shop and said I need two key fobs for a Yamaha FJR, and they sent them. I didn't have to prove that I had an FJR. All I had to do was tell them I wanted the key fobs and give them $80.
Yep. And if you do that with a Jeep, you've got like a $30,000 vehicle for an $80 key fob.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings up the question, is there too much technology in these vehicles?
Well, I don't think that there's too much technology. I think the problem is companies like Chrysler and Ford and GM and whoever else, all of them, haven't thought through the technology that they have in there. So, like, you know, these Jeeps are backing into people, killing them, and you know they're not thinking through everything. The video that they have of this Jeep being stolen, the guys just roll up it with a computer, program it, get in, drive away, and it's done.
It's done.
You know, I mean, God.
I think my next car will be a Model T.
Yeah, right.
One I got to wind up to start. You know, it's really, because if this is possible, then the future of hackers, and they've already shown they can do it over the internet. That video you described earlier of all the cars being autonomous and they're all going along smoothly. What happens when hackers start hacking those cars and slamming them into each other? These cars won't have driver's wheels. They won't have pedals or anything else like that. And hackers will be able to hack them and cause unknown amounts of damage. I think there's too much technology. I think we're taking the responsibility of driving away from the driver and giving it to whoever else wants to take over that responsibility.
Well, I think that drivers need to realize and understand that they do have the ultimate responsibility, and that's something that I just don't think that they do. And I think there was another accident tonight, by the way. I saw I saw in the news in Pittsburgh, I think. Yeah. Another Model X or something.
Oh, another Tesla accident.
Yeah. Oh. Now, they don't know at this point if it had autopilot engaged or they did some kind of weird wording with it, but they're going to check and make sure. But, you know, okay, if it was engaged and it made a mistake, then we'll see. Yeah. But Uh, I don't know.
The weirdest story from last week had to be Apple in talks to buy Tidal music service. Does this make any sense to you?
Well, you know, Apple is all about the celebrities at this point.
No.
That's what their music service is about. The more celebrities, the better, they think, and if that's how they want to do it, then there's a lot of celebrities at Tidal that could use some cash.
So this isn't a technology play. This is simply an entertainment celebrity play.
I think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I think just like what you said in the story on The Loop, Jim said, Apple doesn't need more celebrities. It needs to fix what it already has. I think what it already has is good, can be very, very good. Apple's got a lot of cachet in the music industry. They can compete with Spotify straight up to get listeners. They can get their service to be where it wants to be. I don't think they need to buy their way into the hearts and minds of the music industry. I think they need to make sure that what they have is something that they always have had in other areas where us users brag about the service to other people. Just like you and I were talking about earlier, that you search, when you want an app, you talk to your friends about it. When somebody wants to talk about music, Apple should be in a place where everyone raves about Apple Music, and that's how people get on the service. Not because Jay-Z or someone else is selling an album on it.
Yep. No, I agree.
Dave D says, Shawn, could this be about reducing competition rather than buying more loyalty?
No, because Tidal isn't any competition.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that they're going after them now, because Jay-Z paid $56 million for it when he bought it. It made a little splash because they had so many exclusives, but then it just started to go downhill fast. And there's not that many users on Tidal. They still have the artists backing it, but they're still on Apple Music and they're on Spotify and everything else because they know they have to be. I used Tidal for a while. I signed up for Tidal. There's nothing spectacular that I saw on Tidal that from a technology standpoint that would make me say, wow, why doesn't Apple have this? It was your typical music app. And when you look at what Apple doesn't have that Tidal does, it's those artists exclusives. So no doubt, Jimmy went sauntering over and said, "Hey, we can give you a few bucks for it before it goes bankrupt."
And I think that's part of the key too. Is that one of the reasons why artists joined Tidal was because they were promised more money than if they were on Pandora or Spotify or the other things. So if Apple simply says to those artists, we'll give you more money, then they'll go to where the money is. Yeah. I don't think it's a technology play or a competition play. I think if it's true, and we don't know that it's true, that's where Apple is going. They just want those artists in their stable as a celebrity play. But I agree with Jim when he says, I'd rather have Apple Play work better the way it is as opposed to being frustrating and aggravating.
Well, we can always hope for that.
No kidding. Folks, I've been talking to Jim Downpour of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He has his own podcast up there on that iTunes store. Do a search for Jim Downpour, and they will pop up. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Next week, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
If you have any questions for Jim or comments about anything Jim says, if you want to accuse him of being a libertarian oligarch, and again, if someone could explain that to me, I would greatly appreciate it. Send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I think one of the funniest stories I saw this past week, this happens all the time, and we often say, how can this happen? How can somebody not see that this is a bad thing? Did you see this story? Parents outraged, I say, to learn a local Hooters sponsored the Cub Scout camp. What the hell? Well, who thought that this was a thing they wanted to do? Come on. Yes, the restaurant gave them some money, and yes, the waitresses came over to volunteer. Now, to be clear, the waitresses volunteered in perfectly acceptable attire. They weren't in their usual Hooter wear. They were coming to help out the Boy Scouts. That's great. Volunteering is fantastic. If you have the time to volunteer, please volunteer. But some asshat thought that it was a good idea to have the Hooters brand associated with the Boy Scouts of America brand. Hooters in a nominally an adult restaurant, and Boy Scouts, it's just not. That was just dumb. It was just, don't do stuff like that. Wayne says, who cares where the money comes from? Well, lots of folks care. And because they care, don't make bad decisions that get your dumbass in trouble. You see the story that PBS lied about the July 4th fireworks? The PBS showed the fireworks from Washington, D.C., and I saw something about this on Twitter, and I kind of ignored it. But apparently it was cloudy in Washington, D.C., so the fireworks either weren't going to happen or they weren't going to go off the way they wanted them to. So PBS just spliced in video from previous year's fireworks. The problem was they showed sunny, clear skies instead of the cloudy in Washington, D.C. Come on, PBS. Make better decisions. And finally, this really pissed me off. This Tech Republic writer says, ever wonder about your tech style quotient? Let me tell you what your device choices say about you. What your device choices say about you? My device choices say one thing about me, one thing only. I use this device. We have this awful habit in our society wanting to get the lowest common denominator. We want to reduce everybody to A or B instead of accepting the fact that we're all different in different ways. You can't generalize about me because I use this device, no more than you can generalize about me because I ride a particular kind of motorcycle. You can't generalize about me because I drive a particular car or like a particular kind of peanut butter. You can't. Human beings are far too complex and complicated to be able to tell anything about them because they use a Samsung Nougat Galaxy R12 or an iPhone 6 Plus. And to have a nominally tech writer doing this devalues everything that other people write about when it comes to these kind of things. Saying that you can tell anything about me because of the device I use, that makes you a frickin' moron. You're just an idiot if you think that you can generalize in that kind of way about human beings. In our starting point photography segment, one of my favorite styles of photography is what's known as street photography. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You go out on the street, you take pictures. And that's an umbrella term for a lot of different kinds of photography. Street photography can be urban landscape photography. It can be people photography. It can be staged poses. It can be off-the-cuff shots. There's all kinds of different ways of doing street photography. It's generally the thing that has in common is it's a cityscape, a shot of a cityscape of a city. So the downside of street photography, for me in particular, is it's kind of hard. You know, you're walking in the street and you see, let's use human beings as an example, somebody walking towards you that is in some way to you photogenic. I'm not saying they have to be beautiful or handsome, but they've got something interesting to their face. It's really hard for a lot of us to pick our camera up and point our camera at that person and take a picture. Some of us can do it. There's a very well-known Dutch street photographer who walks around events in Holland, and he's looking around, he sees somebody that's interesting, and he just does that and walks away. He sticks the camera in their face, takes the picture, and walks away. It's hilarious to watch this guy shoot. What a weird, ballsy thing to do. Just walk up and click and take a picture, walk away. So there's two things you can do. You can do stealth street photography, or that's where a person doesn't know you're taking their picture. Or you can do not pose, but informed street photography. So you walk up to somebody and say, "You've got a great face. Would you mind if I take your picture?" Or, "I love that hat." Or there's a street vendor making hot dogs. "Hey, would you mind if I took your picture?" And there's good and bad points to both of those kinds of photography. The good point for the stealth one is they don't know you're taking their picture. Therefore, in theory, they'll be more natural. And on the other hand, if they do know, maybe they'll start posing and doing things that you don't really want to capture. You have to decide what kind of photography you want to do, posed or natural. If you want to do posed, you have to be able to walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, would you mind if I take your picture?" That's not an easy thing to do. I find it really hard to do. Weirdly enough, I find it really hard to do when I'm by myself. If I'm with somebody else, if I'm with a group of photographers or just one other photographer, I find it very easy to walk up to somebody and say, "May I take your picture?" Now, for me, I have the advantage. I'll always have a business card ready. I walk up to them and say, "Hi, my name is Shawn," and I give them the business card. "I'm a professional photographer. I think you've got a great face. Would you mind if I take your picture? If you send me an email after this, I'll send you the pictures that I took of you." And most of the time, people say yes. If they say no, I'll walk away. You'll see some folks will have these great big huge telephoto lenses on their camera so they can get a shot from 200 meters away. You can do that if you want. One of the tips I tell folks is you have your camera and you want a wide angle lens. You want a camera that can shoot fairly wide as opposed to a narrow telephoto lens. You want to shoot wide. And the reason why is one of the techniques I do is I'll have this, for example, this lens is a 12 millimeter to 40 millimeter lens. So it's got a nice wide range on it. And I'll have it zoomed all the way in. So I'm at the 12 millimeter range. And when I see somebody I think is interesting walking towards me, I will aim the camera, but not at them. I'll aim it over their shoulder. So if they see me and they're walking towards me, they think I'm not actually shooting them. But, and this takes a little practice to get used to, you'll know that they're still in the shot even if they're standing over here. I'm pointing the camera that way, but they're still in the shot over here. The other technique I'll do is I'll point the camera at somebody and take the picture, but don't take the picture and then move your camera away. Take the picture and then hold the camera steady as if you were still shooting. Let them walk through your frame and walk past you. That way, it looks like you're waiting for them to move out of the way before you take the picture. The other thing you can do is take the picture and then look above the person as if you were shooting above their head. Make them think that you weren't pointing the camera directly at them, but you were pointing it up somewhere else. The other thing that my friend Antonio Rosario, who has got a really neat video of him shooting, he does some amazing black and white shots of Brooklyn, his home neighborhood of Brooklyn. And he is just so clever. What Antonio does is he has a small little mirrorless camera. I think it's a Fuji X100 or XT100. Very small mirrorless camera. He's got a regular everyday camera strap around his neck and a wide-angle lens. And Tony will go out the streets of Brooklyn acting like a tourist. He'll have a little funny little hat on and, windbreaker and, I don't know, maybe an I Love New York shirt on, that kind of stuff. So if you look like a tourist, people who live in the area ignore you because they've seen 1,000 tourists. And what Tony does is with the camera around his neck and his finger on the shutter button, he starts messing with the camera strap, making it look like the camera strap is caught up in his shirt. And he just does this. And so people walking towards him ignore him. All they see is a tourist messing with the camera strap. But while he's doing that, he's taking their picture. And it can be on an angle. That's fine to be on an angle. You want to straighten it up. But as he's doing this, he's also shooting them with the camera. I think it's a very clever, sneaky way of taking pictures. The other thing about street photography you want to do is don't just walk up and down a street. Find a spot that you think is interesting, what I'll often do is I will stand by a what's called a natural frame. So a doorway or a window or any kind of arch. And I'll sit there, I'll stand there and wait for someone to walk into the shot as opposed to walking around looking for the shot. Stay in one place. Because the other thing is, when you stay in one place, you start to become invisible to people around you. They just ignore you. One of the suggestions that I've seen from other street photographers is wear dark clothes, so you sort of blend into the background. Don't wear bright yellows and reds and things like that. Kimbo says, why are we as humans so scared or suspicious of having our picture taken? Motives. We don't know what the motive of the photographer is. We don't know why they're taking our picture. Are they going to sell the picture? Are they going to use it for ways that I don't want? You have captured a piece of me. What are you going to do with that piece? It's not the soul. We've all heard the stories of some people think that you're capturing their soul. I don't think we think that. But it's, what are you doing with that representation of me? Monty says, the photography topic tonight is very interesting. I'm not at all comfortable taking pictures of people I don't know in public. And that's fine. Neither am I. I love doing it, but I'm always a little wary of it. And for me, it's a little bit easier. I'm 6'3" and 250 pounds. If I take your picture and you're not happy about it, I could probably deal with it. But if you're not comfortable confronting people or being confronted, maybe it's not something that you want to do. I tell the story all the time of I was sitting in a cafe here in Vancouver with my good friend Vito Mori. And I'm watch the people walk by. And this really good-looking guy, he's about 25, 26 years old, really good-looking guy, is walking down the street and he's talking on his iPhone. And I don't know why I wanted to take his picture. So I grabbed the camera and I fired off a few shots. He saw me and he stopped and looked at me and goes, "What are you doing?" So I'm taking your picture. Why? I said, because you're a good-looking guy. He went, "Oh," and walked away. Because you can't get mad at someone who says you're good-looking, But I wouldn't have had a problem if he said, "Well, delete that," or that kind of stuff. I would have said, "No, I'm sorry. I'll send you the picture, but I'm not going to delete it." Dave D says, my dad is the greatest pic from Italy. 2 old guys in a doorstop drinking wine and telling jokes. I love those kinds of photos. Those natural, non-posed, just people living their lives photos. Those are the kind of photos I look for when I go shooting street photography. Wayne says, does anyone think taking a picture without asking is kind of a jerk move? That's a personal opinion. I don't think it is. Again, I think it's your motives. My motives for taking pictures of people I don't ask are wanting to capture people in a natural environment doing natural things. I can see why some people would think it would be a jerk move, but you're in public. And in general, when you're in public, you have no expectation of privacy is the legal term for it. Now, some places you do. About a year ago, Hungary passed a law that said you weren't allowed to take pictures of people in public without their permission. So get into the laws in your area, but in North America, at least in Canada and the U.S., if you're in public, I can take your picture. Macman says, though taking pictures of someone's kids without permission is a good way to get your ass kicked. Absolutely. It depends on the situation. But, if you go down to your local kids park with your camera and start taking pictures, that's going to piss some people off. Anytime I see a cute kid, I will always ask the parent, would you mind if I take the picture? And most parents say no. So expect to be told no. And I have no problem with that. But again, I will have a business card that says professional photographer on it with my email address that I will hand to them and say, I'm a professional photographer. I'd love to take a picture of you and your kid. Monty says, I did exactly that a few years ago at Disney. We were standing in line. The family behind us had an adorable kid. I asked his mom if she would mind if I took some shots. When she agreed, I gave her my business card and told her to send me an email when she got home, and I'd send her copies. I also showed her the images on camera and offered to delete any that she would prefer me not to take. Exactly. That's perfectly fine. Kimbo says, taking a picture of someone is no different than smiling at someone that catches your eye. That can also be a no-no, too, depending on the person. So what I tend to do is go and find a place that's comfortable to sit down, and for me it'll be a pub or a cafe, and look for people walking through a particular scene. There's a garden here, Dr. Sun Yat-sen Gardens here in Vancouver, and it's got this wonderful round doorway. And I will often stand 15, 20 feet away from that doorway and wait for folks to walk into the frame of the doorway. I've gotten some great shots that way. As opposed to walking around looking for stuff to shoot. Find something that's interesting, an interesting background or an interesting scene, and then wait for that scene to play itself out. Wait for people to move through the scene. The other thing is you want to set your camera up for the conditions that you're going to be shooting in. For me, I'm almost always shooting aperture priority, and I'll have my aperture set to either f8 or f11. Those are where it's called the fire and forget apertures. That'll give you a good depth of field. And the thing about f8 and f11 is if you're using the technique of the person's over here, but you're aiming this way, they'll still be in focus. The smaller that aperture number is, the less depth of field you're going to have. So things that are off that plane, the smaller so if you're shooting an aperture f8 or f2.8 or that kind of thing, you've got less of a chance of getting everything in focus. So I shoot at f8 or f11. So I've got a big depth of field, and I'm sure of catching a bunch of different faces. The other thing you're going to want to do is set your ISO for the lighting conditions. So if it's very, very bright light, you want a low ISO. If it's overcast or cloudy or dark, you can bump your ISO up to 4, 6, 800 ISO. The other thing is look for weather. I love shooting in the rain. I'll go downtown in Gastown here in Vancouver and stand under an awning. And it's a great way to get shots of people, natural shots of people, who aren't going to look at you because all they want to do is just get to where they're going. They're not looking around. They're getting wet. They're outside. It's cold. It's miserable. And you'll get different looks on their faces. Not necessarily happy looks, but you'll get different looks. And finally, a big deal for street photography, and this is your choice artistically, a lot of street photography looks really good in black and white. This is a great way to experiment with black and white. If you want to play around with black and white, people's faces often look really, really good in black and white. Black and white, you can hide a lot of blemishes, a lot of wrinkles, a lot of not necessarily attractive aspects of people's faces using black and white. It also makes much better contrasts. You know, you can be walking down the street in the summertime and everyone's wearing blue and red and green and those kinds of clash in a color shot. But when you turn that to black and white, you get different shades of black and gray, and it's less distracting when you're shooting people's faces. Kimbo says faces look great in black and white. Exactly. But the other thing is, don't just shoot people. Look for buildings, architectural details, angles, shadows. That kind of stuff is also a lot. If you're not comfortable shooting people's faces, shoot the environment. Look up, look down, look around you to see what kind of architecture you're looking at, what kind of lines you can see. MacMan says, have a model release handy, too, if you think you may publish a picture. If at any point in time you think you're going to want to sell your photos, you must have a model release. There is no reputable company in the world who will buy your photos from you if they have a person's face in them without having a model release, because they can be sued. You can be sued. The photos are okay if you're taking pictures, if you're taking street photos of people's faces, and all you're doing is posting them on Facebook or posting them on a blog or that kind of stuff. If you're not trying to make money with a photo, you don't need a model release. If you want to sell if you want to sell your photo, if you want to sell it to a stock photography house, or you want to put it in a book that you're going to sell or a calendar that you're going to sell, you must have a model release, because the company you're working with will not work with you without having a model release. Now, the good news is you can get model releases for free on the internet. I've got an app I use on my phone and on my iPad where you can actually fill out the model release ahead of time, and I'll fill it out with my name, my company name, the date of the shoot, all the conditions of the shoot. Conditions are generally, I'm not going to make you look stupid, but I'm not going to pay you either. Sign here. And they can sign with their finger. And then the cool thing about this app is the app then lets you take a picture of the person's face using the iPhone or using the iPad, and then it gets emailed to the person. So a picture of them with the contract, with their signature, gets sent to them by email and sent to you by email. So there's your model release. The other thing is, if you're going to sell your photos, avoid having any recognizable logos in your photos. The Nike swoosh, a Subway restaurant sign, Starbucks logo. Stock photography houses will not accept those photos either, because those logos are trademarked by the companies that own them, and therefore you can't sell Nike's trademark in your photo without their permission. If you have any questions about this stuff, as always, I love answering questions about this stuff. Send me an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. You guys know I'm more than happy to answer any photography questions that you might have. Speaking of which, where's my questions? I've lost them. Oh, they're there. Are smartphone cameras getting better than DSLR cameras? Dave Haney. No. And they never are going to get better. Never say never, but it's highly unlikely that they're ever going to get better for a very simple reason. I always say photography is about capturing light. Your iPhone has that as the light capturing bit. Oh, it's over here. Right? There's your lens opening. See how big that is? Smaller than my thumbnail. This, look at the size of that light capturing bit. Look at the two of them together. This is going to capture more light than this. There's your first thing. Secondly, the sensor in this, the thing that actually captures the light, the thing that acts as film on your camera on this, is about that big. It's a little teeny tiny. I think it's 1/32 of an inch across. The sensor on this one is about 10 times bigger than that. It's probably about the 3/4 of a stamp. That doesn't sound big, but it's significantly bigger than this. So the sensor, the light gathering capabilities of a DSLR are always going to be better than the light gathering capabilities of a phone, simply because of physical size. But then the sensor on the phone is always going to be smaller than the sensor on your DSLR. So while camera phones are getting better, and they're really good cameras for phones, they don't have that dynamic range of a DSLR, and they're probably never going to be able to capture everything that a DSLR does. Along with that question is, why are Apple's iPhone cameras so terrible at taking pictures in the dark? Now you know the reason why. Because this lens opening just can't grab enough light. It's not as big as that. That's the simplest answer, is the thing that gathers light, this opening right here, is very, very tiny. The smaller the opening, the less light it can gather, the less good it is in low light conditions. Our friend Lauren Finkelstein, the official Jew of Your Mac Life, says, my iPhone story. Well, you were there, he said. I joined you and Lisa in the line at about 7 a.m. Paul Sonner met up with us at some point, too. And we had our 50 minutes of fame when Pogue's video hit the top of the YouTube charts for a day. Then we all went to my apartment to activate them. The iPhone was amazing, but also the vibe and the line. Everyone sharing in the excitement. It was a great time. I completely forgot about that YouTube video. Lauren, I'm going to post this in the chat rooms. You folks can watch the videos. If you are listening to the archive of the show, the title of the video, if you want to go to YouTube, is iPhone the Music Video from the New York Times. This was shot just outside the Apple Fifth Avenue store on the launch day of the iPhone. I forgot, Lauren, that Paul Sonner was there. Yeah, he was. You guys came and joined us in the mornings. What else do I got here? I got that story. No. Oh, you may have heard the story that there's a new version of Mac malware out there. As always, be careful where you download stuff from. That's the basic caveat. Try to avoid downloading software from disreputable websites. Unfortunately, Mac Update, which used to be a site that we could all trust, is no longer and hasn't been for a long time a site that I trust. What I will tend to do is I will download software from the manufacturer's site. I don't use download.com anymore. I don't use Mac Update anymore. I don't use any of those aggregation sites anymore. The app is called EasyDoc, an application that supposedly does, I think OCR. I don't know what it actually does. But you want to make sure if you're, especially for those folks who aren't as familiar with this stuff, I make sure that my friends' Macs have got Gatekeeper turned on. And Gatekeeper is available in your system preferences under, I believe, is it security? Let me just check. Where's security? Where's security? I thought there was a security. I thought there was a security. There's security and privacy. Jesus. Under general, it says allow apps downloaded from the Mac App Store, and identified developers, and anywhere. Unless you know what you're doing, one of those first two should be checked. If you go to a friend's house and they're not computer literate, check this thing and make sure one of those first two are checked. Now, for me, I've got anywhere checked because I download a lot of software from developers, beta software, and things that people want me to test out. So I've got that unchecked. But I also don't download stuff willy-nilly from Joe's Software Shack. The other thing you can do is get the software called from Malwarebytes Anti-Malware. Malwarebytes Anti-Malware for the Macintosh. It's free. It's frequently updated. It's a good place to get a free piece of software that checks for these kinds of malicious bits and pieces. Malwarebytes, MALWAREBYTES.com is the place to get it, and it's called Anti-Malware for the Mac. Grab that. It's free. I don't know if there's donationware available, but it's definitely a piece of software that you should have with you to protect yourself from this kind of malware. There's very little malware on the Macintosh, but there still is some. There still is some you have to protect yourself from, and use at least the minimum tools to protect yourself from this kind of stuff. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me. Thanks, as always, to you guys for being tuned into the show, whether you're being tuned in live or via the archive. I always love hearing from you guys. So send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. So until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!